I welcome you to my channel, my dear very YouTube drifter. Everything in the world begins with a story. My channel, like all things, will begin with one. A small story about something crucial for every person in the world, the reasons of our suffering. A few weeks ago, I crawled out of the video gaming station I call home to receive my monthly dose of vitamin D. As I strolled through the streets of a major European city where I currently live, I saw pleasant buildings, orderly streets, and beautiful people. Yet, despite all the beauty around us, almost every person I came across seemed bothered by something. This has led me to think about the fundamental reasons of human unhappiness. From the historical perspective, despite all shocks of the last 6 years, by the way, I'm recording this in 2025. We are still living through one of the most peaceful and comfortable times in history. In the ancient, medieval, and early modern times, the protracted periods of peace were the exception rather than the norm. 1600s and 1700s Europe did not have a single whole decade of peacetime. And even when these exceptional periods of peace happened, most of them were harsh in some other way. The famous Pax Romana, the period when the entire Mediterranean region was at peace, united by the Roman Empire, was also the period of political system of Principat, the military dictatorship which retained the formal institutional facade of the Republic. The Republic effectively stopped to exist, and the possibility for Roman citizens to influence the direction of the state without going to civil war was effectively reduced to zero. Not to mention the non-citizen majority of population of the empire, for whom the strong Roman center meant the need to exist in a political entity that they never chose, the political entity that could, as in Jewish case, plunder the treasury of your religious center, then expel the community from the city where this community existed for at least 150 years, and then, when these actions provoked a rebellion against Rome, burn Jerusalem and the temple to the ground. Another example of a famous period of prolonged peace, the Edo shogunate of Japan, was a time of autocratic rule of Tokugawa family, of persecutions of religious minorities, and severe limitations of freedom of movement. Until the end of the Cold War, most periods of prolonged peace humanity experienced were also connected to some kind of authoritarian rule of a supreme power which defeated everyone else in the region and dominated its own society. In our times, however, the majority of countries of the entire world are not participating in a military conflict, nor do they go through a period of violent instability. Of course, the number of autocracies worldwide is growing, but the experience of at least the European Union shows that we are living in a unique time when it is possible to maintain the peace between the countries, which were at conflict for decades without a supreme authoritarian force. This, at least, might be a foundation for optimism for all of us. More than any other time in history, humans are protected from hunger, natural disasters, and disease, even if we consider COVID, AI slop, and Fortnite. The real and constant fear of hunger, which could happen any time because of a bad harvest, is no longer an imminent threat in most countries on the planet. Many diseases, which killed hundreds of thousands of people throughout history, still exist but are no longer a threat they once were. Diseases like smallpox, cholera, or consumption. But we, the human beings, are still unhappy. Of course, it is impossible to objectively count human happiness or compare the human happiness in post-industrial society to societies of farmers or even hunter-gatherers. What we know for certain, however, is that the level of trust towards the social and political institutions is decreasing, both in Europe and North America. The second thing that we know, and this is indeed a critically important thing, is that there is currently a global decrease in happiness among young adults. In some countries, like in Canada, where all social groups became unhappier from 2008 to 2025, the young adults were hit the hardest. You can see on the graph that young adults were once the happiest demographic in the country. Now they are the least happy. It is not only the Canadian phenomena. In Germany, the United States, or in Australia, the trend is the same. The young adults were previously the happiest group of population everywhere, and now they are not. Why is this so important for a general conversation about happiness? The young adults are those who have the entire life ahead of them. The young people are those who did not reach financial and professional stability. If the young people are unhappy and the society overall trusts the institutions less, it is a marker that there is a general lack of confidence about the future in society and about the ability of the institutions to fix the existing problems. And if you can't be sure about future, it is hard to enjoy life. In order to understand why we, humans in 2025, suffer, I've tried to locate what humans had in the past, before Industrial Revolution, but what we no longer have. And there are three main things that we currently lack, even, or maybe especially, in the most developed countries in the world. There are, in my interpretation, three main reasons for unhappiness in 2025. The first reason, and the most important one, is the lack of long-term social stability. Let's just take a look at the medieval farmer. We know that this farmer is under a threat of all kinds of short-term socio-economic risks. The modern human is much better protected against these kinds of risks. However, long-term, the medieval farmer knows that his labor will always be sought after, and this farmer even thinks that his children will be farmers as well. The long-term socio-economic predictability, not affluence, not wealth, is a prerequisite of happiness. We, humans in 2025, don't have that at all. Many people in 2025 know that their jobs can disappear in the next 5 years because of another tech bro who launched a startup and optimized business processes, or because of the competition that is fierce in any field, or because the next right-wing government will defund your research because they don't believe in vaccines. And these are the risks for lucky people who manage to get a profession at all. The aforementioned right-wing government can cut government stipends for students, and you might not get a profession at all. You might also find yourself in a situation of trying to land a beginner-level job endlessly without any hope for improvement. And those are still the lucky people. Those who had the privilege of being born with correct passport in a country that's not a war zone or repressive autocracy. If you were born in a place like that, then you add in the pleasures of living in a war zone or autocracy to the list of factors of your socio-economic instability and of your possible early death. The best possibility for you then is to leave your homeland and try to live in Europe or North America. Even if you succeed and land a job or get into a prestigious scholarship in a Western country and succeed in navigating all of bureaucracy, then you will have all socio-economic risks of a Western citizen without property on your shoulders, and also you won't have any perks of Western citizenship, because you won't have that. And the chances to get a new citizenship or simply a permanent residence will likely decrease because of the political turn to the right. Human beings are not genetically specialized for this kind of competition. Without easily available professions that need massive numbers of workers, we are getting locked into a cycle of severe competition for a selection of limited, high-skilled vacancies. We have to make career decisions that would require years to achieve through education. If you are lucky and education is available to you in the first place, by the time your educational efforts are over, chances are that the entire profession you chose is in decline and you have to start over. The only people who are safe from this are the absolute minority, those with large generational wealth, a familial dynasty specialized towards a certain career, and or those who managed by overworking or by luck to evade the sheer competition and replacement of human workers by the machines. These people must be the luckiest of the luckiest, with the right passport, right family, and they also must access the system of education during the right times, certainly not during the cuts introduced by the right-wing governments. The majority of people on Earth, including those in developed countries, are under the constant risk of losing their profession, and with it, their long temporal and financial investments into training. Retraining will not save them because entering retraining almost always means being stuck at the junior positions of every profession and not being able to survive competition. If your life consists of endless risks of losing your livelihood, then you will just have no time to enjoy life and be happy. You will constantly be worried, you will constantly fear for your future. On top of that, for many people, there is no option to save money, and according to 2022 survey, half of people in Germany struggled to save, and in the US, the same share of Americans reported that they are living from paycheck to paycheck in 2024. If there is no option to save, then the psychological effects of the absence of long-term social stability must be even worse than I am describing here. The second reason of our suffering is a widespread unhealthy relationship between human beings and labor. Even those pre-industrial farmers who did not own their land were, in fact, masters of their own labor. They knew direct consequences of their work and the price they had to pay if they did not perform a specific household task at a specific time. If you do not plant the crops on time, the entire harvest might fall. If you do not do the weed control, then your crops might receive fatal damage. If we go further into the time before agriculture and look into fishing or berry and mushroom gathering, we will see that these activities are projects in which individual human being or a collective might see the entire process of production from the beginning to the end. Nowadays, the majority of people are hired workers who are not masters of their own work projects. Our work is regulated through arbitrary concepts like work hours and weeks. We operate under deadlines that do not exist objectively, as if there were a genuine need to do something. In reality, the deadlines, at best, exist because someone higher in the chain of organization hierarchy plans to achieve an important goal of some sort. Even if there is some important project going on within your organization, the fruits of your labor will be mostly reaped by the owners of the company, department heads, and ministers of the state agencies, depending on where you work. And since this won't be your project, which would be implemented by your hands and intellect, it will likely not bring you any fulfillment. Up to this point, I assume that you are lucky and you feel that your labor is truly useful for the society. It is not something guaranteed, you know. There is a famous book by David Graeber called Bullshit Jobs. According to this book, around 40% of the workers feel that their jobs do not bring any real value to the society. Graeber offered a whole classification of bullshit jobs, including flunkies, or people whose job is to make someone feel important, goons, or people whose jobs have an aggressive element, such as lobbyists, PR specialists, telemarketers, and corporate lawyers. Also people from the armed forces. There are also duct tapers, or employees whose jobs exist only because of a glitch or fault in the organization, who are there to solve a problem that does not exist. There are also the box tickers, or employees who exist to allow an organization to claim that it is doing something. And the last group of bullshit jobs are the taskmasters, or unnecessary superiors. If one does a bullshit job, and one does not feel that this job brings any real value to the society, then one's relationship with the labor is even unhealthier. The third and final reason of our suffering is the disappearance of community. In agrarian societies, the small region, a couple of villages, and the small town that functioned as a hub for trade activity of villagers and the place where craftsmen produced instruments for farmers, was the core of identity. Often it was also the border of knowledge about the world for the majority of population of agrarian society. If we are talking about more mobile groups than the farmers, for example nomads or hunter-gatherers, then we find out that they moved around the world in cohesive groups. The survival and success of a group was a survival of an individual. The Industrial Revolution moved the masses of farmers to the cities. National identities and languages were invented in order to replace the local identities and dialects. The states became far stronger technologically than they were ever before, and in the industrial society there was no escape for suffocating presence of the nation-state. The former farmers who became the working class were estranged from their labor, but they were not lonely. The experience of the factory worker became so widespread that the majority of people in the 20th century industrialized societies that it was easy for the workers to sympathize with each other. The commonality of experience allowed the social democratic and communist movements to flourish. Despite losing their original communities, the industrial working class managed to escape social atomization through alternative identities. Our post-industrial society changed in multiple ways. Mass experience of industrial worker is no more, with a relatively small number of people going through that kind of work. The service economy means a perpetual creation of needs, both material and spiritual, with plethora of ways of fulfilling these constructed needs. These ways of satisfying the new needs create lifestyles that are different from each other, but what's even more important, the people who lead these lifestyles can live in the bubble without contacting the other lifestyles at all. The experience of a graphic designer who works on a freelance is different from the experience of a software developer going to the office or even doing the remote work, and these two people might barely contact with each other. Not to mention that the self-employed plumber is even further in his life experience from a person who works full-time in sales. A highly competitive work environment I described earlier also contributes to disappearance of the community. High competition often means that the only good job offer is on the other side of your country, or even on the other end of the world. People with international experiences have advantages in most fields. This means that leaving your family and friends to go abroad is something you are really encouraged to do. Then you arrive at the foreign country and there you live in isolation. Also, immigration changes communities as well. When you and others immigrate to a specific place, its old social structure gets watered down and the sense of community weakens. In short, the reasons why we, the modern humans, might suffer are: we are not sure about our future, we are not sure whether or not what we do is valuable for society, and what we do often does not belong to us in the first place. And lastly, we are unable to build lasting relationships with people, and we might feel that we do not belong anywhere. Maybe some of these problems have a stronger presence in your life and some are of weaker influence. It might be that some of my personal characteristics, such as my introversion, my general nerdiness and geekiness, and interest towards unpractical things influenced my thinking, but all three were present in my life on some level, and they were present in all people I ever deeply interacted with. First two of these problems are of socio-economic political nature. They can be solved without social philosophy and political thinking, and then applying the results of this political thinking. On this channel, among other things, I will publish essays of roughly this format on different social, economic and political problems, with an ambition to build a new school of political thought. I will attempt to systemize all of my thinking in order to create a kind of positive program. The third problem, while it is political as well, the problem of the absence of community, might still be solved without political effort. Of course, I'm just one person, but the other thing I would like to create on this channel is a space for like-minded nerds, geeks, and dungeon aficionados. This channel will be a space for a geeky, introverted soul. Aside from my academic interest for things socio-political, I am also an avid gamer and role player. Mostly I prefer RPGs, strategy and sandbox games. If you are interested in a combination of, hopefully, thought-provoking and educational videos about the world and history, with immersive, deep roleplay narratives and analysis of video games, stay around and subscribe for more insights from Videological Dungeon.